Okay, the first thing that it says is when you type these in your calculator, make sure you put the exponent in parentheses. So like this very first one, sorry to jump in, we have lots to do. So it says, I'm going to leave you to do the rest of these by yourself, but when you do 64 to the 1/2, make sure you put caret and then parentheses 1 divided by 2. Okay, so do those, hit pause, do these first four, and write your answers down, and then hit play again. So hopefully you saw that on all these, when you hit that 1/2 exponent, that on the first one you got 8, the second one you got 10, third one you got 6, and the fourth one you got 2. Is there a pattern? Well, what do you think? I mean, basically, I'm hoping that you recognize that the 1/2 power is the same as its square root. So let's write that down. The 1/2 power is the same as a square root. Okay? So if we do these, same idea, hit pause, type them in your calculator, see what you get. Typing these into your calculator, hopefully you got 125 to the 1/3 power is 5, 64 to the 1/3 power is 4, and 16 to the 1/4 power is, let's see, 2, and 243 to the 1/5 power is 3. So basically, if you want to rewrite all these, you should be able to figure out that instead of writing it as the 1/3 power, this is the same thing as the cube root of 125. Number 6, this one's the same root as the cube root of 64. And number 7, if it's 16 to the 1/4, that 1/4 means the same thing as the 4th root of 16. And lastly, you've got the 5th root of 243. So the other thing that what you really don't realize is all these are a power of 1 because the numerator in every situation is a 1. So technically it's like 243 to the first power, but also the 5th root because the numerator is the exponent still on the inside. Okay, so if it says, what do you get when you type 8 to the 2/3 power into your calculator? Let's go ahead and do that. So you do 8 caret 2 divided by 3. Make sure you put parentheses around that, and hopefully you got 4 as your exponent. So another way to write that is we know that the denominator represents the type of index you have, but this also represents 8 squared. So doing both of those, that means that I'm doing the cube root of 64, or I could write it this way too, one or the other. And I could do the cube root first and do the cube root of 8 and then square that. And we know the cube root of 8 is 2, and 2 squared would give me 4. The order of these doesn't make any difference. So when we write this down, we can say x to the m divided by n power is the same as n would be your root and m would stay your exponent. Okay, so you just had one example, 8 to the 2/3 would be the 3rd root of 8 squared. Okay, 5 to the 3/5 power would be the 5th root of 5 cubed, and so on. All right, so basically we got to do a lot of practicing. First thing we're going to do is just rewrite these. So we know the denominator is your exponent. Sorry, the denominator is your index, and your exponent is the numerator. So we have x to the 5th, and then we're going to 6th root that. Now remember on this one, 0.4 is 2/5. So you got to know that first. So this is really x to the 2/5 power. So if you know that, then you can rewrite that as this would be the 5th root of x squared. Likewise, this one would be the 4th root of x to the 7th. Ooh, this one's a little tricky. So we want to, again, we want to rewrite first and foremost. So this is like x because in the denominator. So it's kind of like this. The negative first because we need to move it from the denominator, which means now we can put that 3rd root back as a denominator. And that becomes, if you can't read that, x to the negative 1/3 power. Okay. The negative comes from the original cube root being in the denominator. So let's write these as radicals, and then we're going to simplify them. So when we write them as radicals, like for instance, this one would be a third root of 216, and then we can square it, or vice versa. The reason that I do the root part first is because doing a root is going to simplify and make the number smaller. So when I do the cube root of 216, then I get 6. So this gives me the opportunity to get a smaller number here from the inside, and I get squared, and I can do that in my head. I get 36. Okay, and I can do the cube root of 216 using my cheat sheet as well. Okay, so the next one says the square root of 9. I know we don't normally write that, but just getting in the habit of writing it in a way that where we make use of our exponents and our denominator. So this one would be the square root of 9. I know we don't usually write this, but we know that the square root of 9 is 3, and we know that 3 to the third power would be 27. And then we have one more down here, and it says the fourth root of 81. And after I figure out the fourth root of 81, I'm going to raise it to the fifth power. So we know that the fourth root of 81, that comes out to be 3. And then I'm going to have to do 3 to the fifth power, which gives me 243 as my final answer. So all of these you could get from your cheat sheet. So first you would get this part if you look on the fourth root row, and then you would look under 3 as the answer to that and raise it to the fifth power. Let's see. So now we got to do a lot of simplifying. We have a lot of these to practice, and it's going to take using all of our information that we've done in the past. So first thing I'm going to do on this one is expand with that exponent of 4. So I've got my 2x to the 4th, y to the 3rd. And then I have 2 to the 4th, x to the negative 8. So some of this is just old practice stuff we've done. So when I combine my 2's, I get 2 to the 5th, because this has a power of 1. And then when I combine my x's, I get negative 4 because I added them. And y stays y cubed. So 2 to the 5th we know is 32. I'm going to move my x's now to the denominator and make it x to the 4th since it was a negative 4. And then that stays y to the 3rd. Okay. Next one, I'm going to go ahead and put these 3 and 2 together. I'm going to get 6. Actually, let's strike that. Instead of doing that, I just saw as I was doing that I have this 3 and this 3 that I'm going to go ahead and cancel. And that just leaves the 2. I also have a's in the numerator that I'm going to add together and make it a negative 7. I like to clean up the top before I move things to the bottom. And then I have a negative or a positive 4 on the denominator. So now I'm going to move these a to the negative 7th. I'm going to go ahead and move them down here so that it becomes a positive exponent. And so I have 2, I have my b to the 4th, and then I have my over a to the 11th. Okay, so now we get to C. Part C, we have to use the same ideas that we were doing before. Like if you look over here, we added our exponents because they were on the same line. So that means for these a's, I'm still going to add my exponents, and I have to add 1/2 plus 3/2. So that means I'm going to have a and 1/2 plus 3/2 is 4/2. And if I reduce that, that's going to give me a squared. All right, same idea. We just have several of these. I'm going to move my x's together. So I have x to the 1/2 plus another 1/2. And I have y, I have 2/3 plus 1/3. And so when we add those, we get 1/2 plus 1/2 gives me 1 whole. And 2/3 plus 1/3 also gives me 1 whole. So we just get xy. Okay. Next, we're going to distribute this 3 to all these guys. So this becomes 4 to the 3rd. All right, and you thought it was bad before. Now we get to multiply and do that for these exponents. So that becomes, whoops, q to the 6th over 5. R, whoa, that's ugly, 9 over 4, 9. And then we're pretty much done with that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and rearrange on part F. So I'm going to put my exponents together. So I have my x to the 4/5, and then I have this one plus another 2/5. And then I have my y is going to be a third plus a third. And these are all on the same level because they're all in the numerator. So 4 plus 5, or 4 plus 2 gives me 6/5, and y is going to be y to the 2/3. And you want to leave them as fractional exponents. Don't rewrite them as radicals and whatnot. All right, so we have the A. Let's regroup. Let's add our 5/2 plus our 3/2. Our B's, we don't have any other B's, so it's going to stay 1/4. We have C. This is 1 whole plus 2/4. So you have to remember how to do fraction math here. So this becomes A. Oh, that's bad. 8/2. That's ugly. B to the 1/4. And C, this is going to become 6/4. So if we simplify, we got A to the 4th, B to the 1/4,